Now, let's take a look at the citizen numbers again. The blue line is our current birth rates. That's the one you saw before. But if we were just to sustain and maintain our population with a 2.1 replacement rate, that's the red line. What will happen is our population will stabilize, plateau off at where the red line is. And even though we have been encouraging more Singaporeans to marry and have children, we have actually been falling short of the numbers to replace ourselves. So if we say, what are we short of? What numbers do we need to get from the blue line to the red line? And that's approximately an extra 20,000 per year to keep our population going from the blue line to the red line. So if you see these three other lines, the topmost line is if we add 25,000 more per year. The second dotted line is if we add 20,000 a year. And the third dotted line is if we add 15,000 a year. So we're somewhere in that band, and that's where we will be to maintain a population which is stable and not declining, and also not growing away sort of in an uncontrollable way. So who are these new Singaporeans? We've been taking in new citizens. In fact, a good number are spouses of Singaporeans. And this is not surprising, given that nearly 40%, 39% of marriages last year, or about 9,000 marriages, were between a Singaporean and a non-Singaporean. So about 9,000 marriages last year out of 22,000 were between a Singaporean and a non-Singaporean. Most of the other new citizens are adults in their prime working years and their families. And we select those who are able to contribute to Singapore and to integrate into our society. So with 20,000 new citizens per year, what we're essentially doing is trying to fill this shortfall. Now, we have two diagrams here. The one on the left shows where we are today, and the one on the right shows where we will be in 2050. Now, I explain these diagrams. Each horizontal bar is one age band of 5 years. And the left side is, the blue side is men, the red side is women. So if you see where we are today, we're sort of like a barrel. And that's where we are today. And if we project forward without immigration to 2050, in 40 years' time, we'll become an inverted triangle with many, many more older people above the age of 50, 55, going up to 80, and very, very much fewer young Singaporeans. Okay? So this is where we will be. And so what is it that we're trying to do with our immigration? Maybe let me try and illustrate this sort of diagrammatically. What we're trying to do is to fill in this part here. So we are now an inverted triangle. And with our immigration, what we're trying to do is to fill in this part so that we look more like a cylinder or a rectangle and fill in these parts here so that as the population grows and ages, it will grow and age in a smooth way. Otherwise, it will become more and more like an inverted triangle and it will become quite unstable. So that's what we're trying to do, to fill in those parts there so that we have a much more stable, sustainable population. Besides Singapore citizens, we also have 530,000 permanent residents today. And these are people who we assess can make a long-term contribution to Singapore. But either they are not yet ready themselves to become Singapore citizens, or we are not yet ready to have them become Singapore citizens. We have reduced the intake of permanent residents in the last 2 years. We've been taking about 30,000 a year in the last 2 years, compared to about twice that number in the 4 to 5 years prior to that. So our permanent resident numbers have in fact stabilized, and in the last 2 years, they have decreased very slightly. What about our non-resident population? Who are the non-resident population in Singapore? We have about 1.49, 1.5 million of these. And this is the composition. There are 220,000 dependents, and these are spouses of Singaporeans, children of Singaporeans, and some of our higher-end work pass holders. We also have international students, about 84,000, if you have read the newspapers in the yesterday I think. The numbers of those have also come down in the last 2 years, from about 100,000 to about 84,000 now. We also have foreign domestic workers, about 210,000 of them. So these are FDWs, and maybe I just have a quick check. How many of you in your homes have a foreign domestic worker? Just have a quick show of hands. So quite a few. And they help us in a variety of ways to look after the elderly, to do many of the domestic chores so that both spouses can go out to work, and when they come back, they don't have to do a lot of the housework. Ironing is a big bugbear. It takes a lot of time, and I don't think I've found a way of automating ironing yet. Then we have work permit holders. There are about 680,000 of them. And most of them are doing work which either Singaporeans are not keen to do, or which we don't have enough Singaporeans to do. And out of this 680,000, 280,000 are actually construction workers. And apart from that, you have cleansing workers in the marine industry and so on. And then manufacturing. So these are the 680,000. And then we have the PMETs, professional managerial executives, which are employment pass holders, about 170,000, and the sort of paraprofessionals, associate professionals, of which there are about 130,000. These have been quite fast growing, and we're trying to see how we can manage the growth of these as well. So that's roughly the makeup of that 1.5 million non-residents, non-citizens, non-PRs in Singapore. The vast majority of them are foreign domestic workers and work permit holders. Some people have asked, why do we need so many foreigners working in Singapore? They make Singapore more crowded, one of your concerns. So why can't we let Singaporeans have these jobs instead? Particularly these jobs here.